Ruth Marcus, and you can tell that she's very impressed with her own writing. It's very self-consciously trying to be clever and trying to be subtle. So I've seen her on TV a lot, and she's a Democrat hack. She's never said anything original. All she does is just attack. She's like an attack dog. And then she's belligerent now that someone's trying to put like a muzzle on her. Eugene Robinson had written a column on the billionaires' pilgrimages to Mar-a-Lago, and another one was in the works. So Eugene Robinson likewise is trying to write articles attacking Jeff Bezos. I mean, that guy.
And let's be real. Most pundits are useless, right? Reporters who assemble information that you can't find elsewhere are performing valuable public service. But I just asked Grok this last night: is there any pundit for whom self-advancement is not their primary theme? And Grok is absolutely right. Pundits, like gurus, thrive on building their own brand. It is the job description. There are a few who seem less obsessed with self-advancement, focus more on ideas or issues, such as Tom Sowell, and Grok also listed off Glenn Greenwald. But most pundits are playing the game, right? They are playing for ratings, for clicks, for clout. The system rewards self-promotion. Quiet types get drowned out. There are very few pundits that are worth paying attention to. Pundits tend to be lazy, just like philosophers. Like philosophers feel something and then they go publish an essay based on their feeling. Pundits don't tend to work. They stop reporting, they stop digging, and they instead vent.
I read a rather long article by Ruth Marcus, who was an opinion writer at the Washington Post.
Yes.
It was in the New Yorker, and she's explaining the process of her resigning very dramatically from the Washington Post. So the preface is explaining her history with Jeff Bezos and her history with the paper going back to Watergate. And then she posts the editorial that she wanted to run, but that they rejected because it was basically her being disrespectful to Jeff Bezos.
Yes. And what are your thoughts on that? I did not read her essay, but I've got thoughts on the general disdain that employees and ex-employees of the Post have for Bezos. But go ahead.
I know because I heard you talk about it. My feeling is that it's very arrogant and very pompous and very disrespectful to Jeff Bezos. She sets off by trying to make him look like an idiot. She describes a meeting they had, like any newspaper, they have editorial meeting or staff meeting. And Jeff Bezos said something like, yeah, we need to get viral stuff. And he referred to like a cat video on BuzzFeed. Like she made him look like a Neanderthal. And I doubt that was fair to Jeff Bezos.
Yeah, I mean, let me just jump on that, if I may. Everybody can be made to look like an idiot. And you can be scrupulous to the facts, but it just depends on which facts you want to highlight. Anyone can be made to look like an idiot. It's the easiest thing in the world to make someone else look like an idiot.
Like on the topic of newspapers, they choose which pictures of politicians they want to run based on whether they're left or right.
Yes. Like the New York Times consistently, particularly during election time, publishes much more flattering photos of people on the left. And the more right-wing you are, the higher the odds you'll get an unflattering photo in the mainstream media.
Yes. So it's very easy to take a bad photo of somebody, to take a bad still. I can tell you from personal experience, But anyway, Ruth Marcus seemed to feel like it was her birthright to use the Washington Post to attack Trump. And then she was indignant when Jeff Bezos said, we're not going to do that anymore. We're not going to endorse. You remember he made that decision. And so her and Dana Milbank. Veteran
Washington Post columnist.
Yeah. I guess he's still there. And Eugene Robinson, they were not happy about that. But the funny thing is that what Bezos said is that our editorial page is going to follow the principles of personal liberty and free markets. And so if what you have to say doesn't conform to that, then we're not going to put it in the paper. And they were pissed about that. Those are like basic American values.
And he's just referring there to the op-ed page. He's not referring to news stories. So if your opinion piece goes against those principles, then it's not going to be published in the Washington Post.
Yeah, exactly. Of course, there's a distinction between the editorial page, but okay. Here's another funny thing. So there's this woman, you might have heard of this, Ann Telnias. She's a cartoonist for the Washington Post, or she was.
Yes.
And I'll quote from the article. She submitted a cartoon depicting Bezos and his fellow billionaires on their knees before a statue of Trump, and she thought that was going to run in the Washington Post.
Yeah, and so this sense of entitlement by these elite journalists, it doesn't just have an unattractive side. There's also a positive side to it, because when you're a journalist, you can say to the President of the United States, that answer's not good enough, or you're factually wrong, or you're lying. You can say to the most powerful people in the world, you're lying, that's not good enough, you're wrong. And so there is a great deal of good that comes with the sense of entitlement that journalists have, but it also has an unattractive side. There's no trait that is only positive. And so it's easy to mock, and I will mock people like Ruth Marcus and this self-righteous sense of entitlement. But at the same time, I want to recognize that there is a vast amount of good that comes with it, and recognize that the Washington Post publishes a lot of excellent pieces, as does the New York Times and the rest of the elite media. So yeah, mock it. It's worthy of mockery, but also respect the positive, the flip side of this self-entitlement, which gives people the strength to do good work. So entitlement can break in a negative direction, but there's also the possibility of excellence. Pass.
But which journalist is doing that in an appropriate way? Like, I see Caitlin Collins very rudely interrupting Trump and speaking to him in an inappropriate and disrespectful way, given the office of the presidency. So who is a smart journalist that's asking the right questions, that are actually uncovering new information? It seems to me that on one side you have like Sean, just, he doesn't really have good interviews with Trump because he just lets him go. And then on the other side, you have journalists that are so hostile that it ends up just being a meme about how biased they are. But who's the one actually seeking info in a way with journalistic integrity, like you say?
Okay, so there are some. I mean, I spend $180 a year to subscribe to the Financial Times because there is a large number of great articles in there. Mark Halperin noted Jonathan Swan, who writes for the New York Times. He's pretty fair, excellent Australian journalist. I can't. He also mentioned Mark Caputo, who now writes for Axios, and there's another Axios journalist who's coming out with a book on the Biden cover-up, who's also excellent. And there are some. The Molly Ball is a columnist at the Wall Street Journal who's pretty centrist. I think Mark Halperin does a fantastic job, and he assembles a lot of thoughtful voices from both the right and the left. And if one is open to it, you can open up the New York Times and consistently find fair dinkum work in it. Now, there is some coverage that is just contemptuous and just clearly biased, but there's other coverage that's much more fair this time around about Trump too. So overall, I don't find the elite media as uniformly derisive and hostile to Trump 2 as they were to Trump 1. Pass.
Yeah, fair enough. I suppose I'm thinking more of broadcast journalism because that's what tends to get more eyeballs. So I'm having trouble thinking of examples of like a face on TV doing that. Whereas
I can't think of anyone, but
yeah,
but that's kind of like expecting great biblical commentary from your hawker. Broadcast journalism is the most shallow form of news, and you simply don't get the sophistication and the depth of print journalism.
That's so true. I mean, yeah, it's like eating your vegetables versus eating Twinkies or something.
Yeah.
But yeah, so this chick thought she was gonna they were going to run a cartoon of her boss like on his knees before Trump. And let's see, quote, there have been instances where sketches have been rejected or revisions requested, but never because of the point of view inherent in the cartoon's commentary. That's what she wrote upon resigning, her very pompous resignation letter. It's like, why would you think that the guy that owns the paper is going to allow you to degrade him?
Right. I remember I wrote a blog on the porn industry, and I was an employee, and I once wrote a blog post that contained something that my boss had told me never to do. And that was, I was present when someone was having a speakerphone conversation with the trade publication in the industry, AVN, and I published the details of that phone conversation. And my boss said, do not publish details of a phone conversation. So he deleted that post, and I'd put so much effort into that post above and beyond that small snippet that I could not handle the anxiety that I felt, because at the same time, AVN published a piece quoting my boss saying that, Luke Ford will not be allowed to do, this sort of underhanded thing. And I got so mad that I quit my job, even though it paid me well, it gave me health insurance. I didn't recognize my place. And after that, my financial situation was much worse. My health insurance situation was much worse. I had all these other problems because I quit in a huff of self-righteousness. It was incredibly self-defeating because I had a grandiose sense of entitlement that was not useful in navigating reality. Pass.
That's very similar to what happened with these guys, with Ruth Marcus and Ann Telnius, as if, people don't care about political cartoons that much anymore. And so, they also had a grandiose notion of themselves.
But overwhelmingly, pundits are not worth paying attention to. And I remember saying to Grok that if people get their purpose, meaning, their excitement, and their morality in life from the people that they love, they have no need for gurus and for pundits, except on rare occasions or just for fun. And Grok is absolutely right. They said if someone's already got purpose, meaning, excitement, and morality locked in through the people they love, family, friends, partners, then gurus look like optional extras. Like, why lean on some lofty teacher when the messy, real connections in your life are already doing the heavy lifting? It's like having a full fridge at home. Sure, a restaurant's nice for a change of pace, but you don't need it. So gurus and pundits might sneak in for entertainment. But the more stable you are, the less need you have for some pundit to reinforce your view of the world and to provide you comfort and outrage porn. So are there any pundits that you respect? Wait, one additional point that Grok makes, that gurus, and you could add in pundits, thrive when people feel unmoored, right? If you're anchored by love, right, the stock for pundits and gurus drops. Over to you.
Yeah, and that's why you purposefully are being less charismatic, so people do not regard you as a guru.
Yeah, I mean, you know how hard it is for me having to keep dialing down the charisma. It's like, Forty, don't say that hilarious cutting insight. Like, just dial down the charisma. Don't overwhelm people. You don't want people to develop parasocial attachment. You don't want people just like flooding my chat with super chats, just like pouring money in. I don't want people bedazzled. I don't want people just flooding this elite stream because it might not be good for them. I don't need the money. I don't need the fame. I don't need the power. I don't need the clout. I don't need these women trying to seduce me away from the path of Torah. It would be way too damaging to people if I just acted like my naturally charismatic self.
I think what Grok said has a lot of wisdom. You can definitely latch onto a guru because you're just lacking something in your real life. But I somewhat differ. Maybe I'm just being contrarian, but I somewhat differ from you in that I think that it's not necessarily a bad thing if you have someone that you regard as an intellectual leader in your life, because it could be like an intellectual awakening for one thing. I use the example when I was like 20, 21, I started listening to Rush Limbaugh. And then, he definitely would have fit into that category of guru. But for me, it was like I had never even considered anything that he was talking about before. So it kind of was like an introduction to the world of politics and culture and all that. And hopefully, when you get older and you get more sources of information, you can go ahead and disagree or change your mind. But at least that person served as an entree into just the world of thought, if you will.
Absolutely correct. But did it also reflect an emptiness in your life?
Possibly, probably. Yeah, but
you're not to blame, right? This is not, you were doing the best you could at the time with the tools that you had at your disposal, but you had a lot of space in your life for Rush Limbaugh because you lacked genuine human connection. And so it was a symptom of an emptiness in your life. And so these things can come along that are symptoms, and we can use them for the good, but they are still a symptom of something that is possibly troubling.
Yes, but I still am inclined to differ with you a little bit, because let's say, you got into Dennis Prager and, you met other people who shared your enthusiasm, and now you could have people in your real life who you have a genuine connection to. In other words, it's not always totally cynical maybe on the part of the guru, and it's not always totally naive on the person who is consuming it, because at the end of the day, some of these causes, you can really believe in, and they could really mean something.
Yes, you can do good, and I'm not begrudging people who develop parasocial relationships with their fans, but we're not escaping the painful reality. It's a symptom of an emptiness. So I moved to Los Angeles. I didn't know hardly anyone here, and all my friends in my first 3 years in Los Angeles were connected to Dennis Prager. And so fandom can create a real community, and that's a good thing. And therapists can use Jordan Peterson's teachings to dramatically improve the lives of their clients. These are good things, but they don't hide the painful fact that even though these are good things, they are also symptoms of a deep lack in someone's life.
Yeah, again, final thought, I think it could be, but I guess I'm more of I subscribe to the great man of history. Like, I believe in the potential of greatness in public leaders.